So touching on the environment, David Cameron took some criticism in the early days of sort of focusing on the environment wherever he goes, but it is a major issue. And it's more of a major issue to do with energy security than it is with global warming. I'm sure we could sit here for 3 hours arguing what the causes of global warming are, and we wouldn't get anywhere because there's so much different opinion. But the fact of the matter is that we are wholly reliant these days on Iran and Russia for our energy resources. A couple of areas in the world, I think you'll agree, where perhaps aren't the most stable. And we are rapidly approaching the decommissioning of not just the nuclear power stations, but the coal-fired power stations as well. It simply is not a solution to say, let's surround the country in wind turbines. Some of you may have seen that I've been opposed to the wind farm at Hook Moor. I actually live in Micklefield, it's in my backyard, and I've talked to the people in the village. In Europe, the wind turbines are not allowed to be sited within 2 kilometres of residential housing. I think if that policy was applied here, we wouldn't have the arguments. 450 metres is how far they'll be at Hook Moor in Micklefield. And there are all sorts of problems relating to having it that close to residential housing. And Micklefield itself already produces 3 megawatts of green energy through the landfill site, which is in the background. I say we've got to have a mix of green energy. We've got to have a mix of wind turbines where suitable. I am a fan of the offshore wind turbine process. I would like to see legislation passed now that all new housing which is built must be slated with solar panels, which look like slate tiles. They're not these big metal-based things which we saw maybe in the 80s on people's houses. You can actually now put solar panels on roofs which look like slate. And the argument always is, oh, but within 5 years they double the efficiency. Well, I've been hearing that argument for 15 years. At some point you have to draw the line and say, we're doing it now. And perhaps in 15 years' time, we'll change them to the ones which are 3 times as more efficient. But if we can do that now, pass that legislation now, we start to contribute to the green grid. And also, this is where the European Union needs to come in. £15 trillion is the estimate to renew and upgrade the current supergrid, national grid, which carries our electricity across Europe on AC lines. £1.5 trillion, i.e. a tenth of the cost, will allow a direct current grid to be put in place. And a direct current grid saves 80% of the energy which is lost through the transmission and the eddy currents which are built up around AC distribution. If Europe can come together on this one and actually do something useful for once, that will go a long way to solving our problems. And also direct current lines are very important when building offshore wind farms because you can run the cable underwater. You cannot do that with an AC cable. So rather than having to convert it back to AC and then back to DC when it gets in the house, etc., we can go for the DC generated grids.